Johnny Kim, SEAL sniper, Harvard doctor, astronaut.
That guy makes me feel like shit.
There's no way! When my father died, I feel like it was the day I was reborn into someone else. And I would probably have to backtrack and tell you the context of why I feel that way. Towards the later years of high school, my mother had enough of the life she had been experiencing. And she would have left my father long ago, but it was really us, myself and my brother, Jeff, that she couldn't leave behind to my father. And there's no way my father would have let her leave with us. That was not going to happen. So, but there was a time where she just couldn't be in the same household. So for months at a time, she had worked it where that she would actually sleep at a friend's house or go away. So at nighttime when my father came back, the food, like my mother would prepare dinner and food, but she would be somewhere else. And this arrangement was going on, and I think my father, obviously not very happy with the situation, thought it would go back to normal, because there had been periods of time where my mother would leave for a little bit, but always came back, because like a lot of abusive relationships, it's hard to leave that, right? And especially when the abuser promises they'll change and may change temporarily, but then goes back to their ways. It's a classic story. But this time was a little bit different, and I think my father knew that this time was different and was getting frustrated. And I think seeing that there were little options left, and I think maybe he felt cornered. And I think cornered animals can be dangerous. Can be very dangerous. Not that I think he was cornered, but I think he felt that way. So on this particular day, I think it was February 21st, 2002. I was home with my mother, and it was during the day, and my father came home, and he was supposed to be at work, so I think it was a little surprising. And I remember when he came home, I could smell the whiskey on his breath, so I knew he was very intoxicated. And it was just, I could feel something was different this time. There was a tension, and I knew I had to stick around. And my mother was surprised and scared to see him there. And they went in the kitchen, and I stuck close by on the couch in the living room. And I remember my father came up to me, and some of the last words he said to me was, "I'm sorry, Jonathan." And he pepper sprayed my face. And then all I hear in the kitchen is my mother screaming for help and saying, "He's got a gun." So I then, fight or flight, you do what you need to do to protect the people you love. So I got up and I did my best to fight him and get that gun. And fought as hard as I could, as strong as I guess a 140-pound-year-old kid could do at the time. But I lost that fight. I still have a scar right around here from when my father was able to get a hold of a dumbbell nearby and smash my head in with it. And I think they kind of turned the fight, and he was able to get his gun out of his pocket. He shot it in the air, and it was, that was the first time in my life that I faced a life or death situation. And as you and I know, there were many more to come later, but for different reasons. But this was my first taste of it. And I don't know how, maybe by the grace of God or something that I said. I remember clearly pleading with him that we loved him and that he didn't have to do this, and that it wasn't. I clearly remember saying that it's not too late. Like this, you have the power to decide right now. It's not too late. And I think maybe clarity or grace, in a moment of clarity that my father found, he decided not to shoot us, not to kill us. And I told him to go run, just run. And he did. He left the back door, and that was the last time I saw my father. After that, in the hysteria of that, my mother was on the phone and called 911 and screaming for help. And so eventually, ambulances came and police came, and I got my head stapled at the hospital. I came back, and the police were there, write a report. And I came back into my room, and I noticed that things had shifted. I have a closet that has access to the attic, and I noticed that furniture was moved in such a way to gain access to the attic. And I told police that I think my father's still in the house and he's in the attic. So they did what they're trained to do. They sectioned off the area and confronted my father, and one thing led to another. I wasn't there, but shots were fired, and my father was killed. And I remember that day so vividly. It was, I don't mean to sound callous, but in a lot of ways it liberated me. It certainly liberated my mother. It was one of the hardest and most sad days for her. But it liberated her, and it liberated myself and my brother. And it taught me, it became the benchmark for me to do so many more things in my life. Because I don't think I was meant to be a SEAL. I don't think I was born to do any of the things that I've had the opportunity to do, but it's because of those experiences. Being able to stand up to a person, to a figure who I feared more than anyone, and to be able to do something that I never thought I could be possible doing, standing up to someone, especially someone who was threatening to kill you and the person you loved most. It was empowering. It liberated me. It taught me I'm not the scared little boy I thought I was. I can do these things, that I can be a part of something bigger than myself. And, I remember having so much foolish, naive pride at the time. I was naturally being 18 and just so angry with the world, just having so much hate to my heart. I think I had a lot of hate in my heart as a kid. When I see my child, Christian, who is full of happiness and carefree and is like me in so many ways, I see him and I realize that is the person I would have become, and I want to protect that. But with the cards I'd been given, I just had a lot of hate in my heart, and I refused to cry because I thought that was a form of weakness, to cry for my father who had passed. And I never, didn't cry at his funeral or anything. And I remember that day, on that day when my father died, we went to the police department. And I'd already known what had happened. And I remember going in, and there were 3 cops to the side, and I knew then, and I also know just now of how warriors talk. And the guy talking was motioning with his hands, and he was recounting the story that led to my father's death. And, using his motions of how he entered, and he saw us come in, and my brother was weeping and very naturally inconsolable, and I was there, and I think we made brief eye contact, and I thank him for that, because I think he had the clarity and the respect to kind of stop what he was doing and realize that he was probably recounting a war story of someone he had killed, and this family was just walking through. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but just telling the story made me remember that. And the detective I talked to, he said, "Son, I'm sorry to tell you, but your father is dead." And this is one-on-one in a room. And I was just emotionless, just stone-faced. And he said, "I take it that this is not bad news. Is this good?" And I said, "I'm just relieved, sir." And he said, "I understand, son." And it's just a day for so many reasons that that helped me be reborn into the person I wanted to become, that I've always wanted to become my entire life. And I knew from there that maybe, just maybe, I had what it took to be a SEAL.